DKI, we're talking money today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ken Copeland, Director of Business Development, and it's time to take five. With us from DKI Services, we have Joe Soros, our CFO. How you doing, Joe?
Great, Ken. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And we're speaking with from American Profit Recovery, Matt Hellis. He's a senior sales consultant there. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So,
My
so
pleasure.
for our members that are not familiar with you guys, who is American Profit Recovery, and kind of what separates you from other collections agencies?
Well, American Profit Recovery was started in 2004. We handle collections for all different types of industries, but we're really focused in the restoration industry nowadays. And ultimately, what separates us from a traditional collection agency that people are familiar with is really just two big things. Number one is the cost. So a traditional collection agency will charge anywhere from 25 up to 50% of any money that's collected, compared to our very low cost of $22 or less per account. And secondly is our diplomatic approach that we take. What we found is, most contractors will work their accounts internally, sometimes pretty aggressively until the account gets very, very old and very difficult to collect. And it's at that point they'll throw up their hands, and then they'll turn it over to an outside agency that charges a percentage, or to an attorney, really with the feeling at that point 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing.
Yeah.
Now, we did our research and we found there were typically two main reasons why the contractors were holding onto their accounts internally for so long. First was the cost. They didn't want to have to pay an agency that percentage. They'd rather work the account internally, at least hoping to get 100% of the money. And secondly, and oftentimes more important than the money, is they didn't want to alienate the customer or even the adjusters that are referring business to them. Now, with American Profit Recovery, because of our very low cost and because of the diplomatic approach that we take, our contractors are simply more comfortable turning their accounts over to us sooner when those accounts are actually more collectible.
Yeah.
With me? Make sense?
Oh, yeah. That makes total sense. Yeah, the sooner you can get into it, the sooner that they're more likely you are. Just like with a missing person, the sooner you go after them, the more likely you are to find them.
Absolutely.
Missing person, missing cash. One and the same.
Person, missing cash. Sometimes, well, we're talking to Joe. It could happen both ways.
Could be related.
So, yeah, that's about the summary of really what we do. We provide full free consultations for contractors. We're looking at best practices that we can share with them. So when a company is looking for a free consultation, we do an accounts receivable analysis, find out what their internal processes are, gives them some best practices that we have found work really well internally before it gets to this point. Okay. But that's part of it.
You mentioned a couple of things that the contractors struggle with as far as alienating the accounts. But I mean, in terms of collections in this industry in general, can you talk a little bit about what specifically restoration contractors have to struggle with on a daily basis?
Well, one of the number one thing that I see contractors are struggling with is when the insurance company mails the checks to the homeowners. Again, the longer the homeowner sits on that check, the odds are they're going to spend it. I've heard of many cases where homeowners will actually use the money to take a vacation or to buy new furniture. So a lot of people don't have replacement insurance on their home. So what ends up happening is when the final check comes in, it's typically shorter than it is going to make them completely whole. For example, instead of getting $2,500 for a refrigerator, because a refrigerator is 10 years old, they may only get $800 out of it. But they're still going to need to replace that refrigerator. And typically that money gets spent. So the earlier you get, again, a third party involved, the homeowner knows there's other consequences involved and that they can't spend it. Yeah. And that's why our resolution rates and our recovery rates are so much higher, is because it allows them to get them to us sooner because of the low cost and because of the approach.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So one thing I want to touch on COVID-19 a bit, because I mean that has been so much of 2020 so far, and I know how that has affected and impacted the labor market. How has it affected collections in your world?
Well, it's surprisingly been very, 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 very positive, and I express that because it's completely blown us away. Our collection department is exceeded all expectations over the last couple of months in reference to revenue being generated, and there's a few reasons why that is. By being locked down, as difficult as that may be, for a collection agency, it's a lot easier to get a hold of people because they're at home. The second thing is, the stimulus checks, right? So typically the best months of being a collector or in the collection industry is typically during tax season. February, March, and April are really good months in the collection industry. Well, with that stimulus check, that's just added to the tax season. The other thing that's happened is people are no longer going to those restaurants and spending the money at the restaurants, or going to bars and frivolously spending their money. They've kind of locked that down. So they have a lot of extra revenue that they didn't have before. Me personally, example, I save $400 a month in gas, just going back and forth to work. So what has happened is those people are using those funds and they're paying down their debt. In fact, I saw an article where the mortgages are paid up to date, more so than at this time than it has been in the last decade. So people are caught up on their mortgages and caught up on their debts during this period of time. And again, if you treat people with respect and dignity, if they are struggling and really have serious issues, we understand that. We let them know that we're here to help them find solutions to their problems. But the other people that are currently working, like myself, that stimulus check went right into my savings account.
Yeah.
And other people are using it to pay down their debt. So it's been very, very good for collections. Absolutely, which has been surprising.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess if you really think about it, that does kind of make sense. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. Collections our members want to get the money that they earn. So, you guys are very valuable. For you DKI members watching this, if you're not in collections, if you're not project manager responsible for the money, or if you're not, the CFO of your company, please share this with them, because when you get into a situation where you need some help, American Profit Recovery is a great partner for you. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Thanks a lot and have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Thank you guys.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Take care.